If you had to choose right now between a guaranteed $50 or a 50-50 gamble for $100, which would you take? Because the answer depends entirely on whether you slept last night. And neuroscientist William Killgore proved it in 2007 by deliberately sleep-depriving people and watching their brains make increasingly irrational bets. The question is, why does losing just a few hours of sleep turn you into someone willing to risk money you shouldn't? And more importantly, what other decisions are you making right now that fatigue is quietly sabotaging? Here's a concrete example. You're at work. It's 3 p.m. on a Wednesday after you stayed up late the night before. Your boss asks if you can take on a new project with a tight deadline. You say yes, even though part of you knows you're already stretched thin. 4 hours of missing sleep just flipped that answer from no to yes. Why? The answer lies in what happens to your prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain that makes deliberate, careful choices when sleep deprivation hits. When you sleep, your brain does something called memory consolidation. It sorts information, strengthens important memories, and clears out metabolic waste that accumulated during the day. When you skip sleep, that cleanup doesn't happen. Your prefrontal cortex starts drowning in its own debris. And here's what matters. That debris makes risk assessment feel broken. Let me show you what that looks like in real life. Scenario 1. You're buying groceries and exhausted. You see a box of cereal on sale. Buy 2, get 50% off the third. You know you'll waste one. Tired, you thinks, I'll probably eat it. Rested, you thinks, no, I'll throw it out, skip it. That's not willpower failing. That's your prefrontal cortex literally unable to calculate future consequence. Killgore's sleep study found that sleep-deprived brains showed 30% reduced activity in the exact region responsible for weighing outcomes. But here's where it gets stranger. A 2018 study by sleep researcher Declercq found that tired people don't just make worse decisions, they also become more confident in bad decisions. They don't doubt themselves more, they doubt themselves less. Scenario 2. You're texting someone you shouldn't text, maybe an ex, maybe someone you're angry at. You're exhausted. The filter that usually stops you is offline. And the worst part? You feel sure it's the right move. You're absolutely going to send that message because tired, you doesn't have the cognitive resources to second guess. Rested, you would spend 5 minutes thinking, no, this is a mistake. Tired, you presses send in 10 seconds. What's happening is that sleep deprivation doesn't just weaken your decision-making, it hijacks your emotional system. Your amygdala, the part of your brain that processes emotion and impulse, becomes hyperactive when you're tired. Meanwhile, your prefrontal cortex, which normally acts like a bouncer keeping your amygdala in check, is exhausted and understaffed. So impulse wins. You become reactive instead of deliberate. Scenario 3. You're looking at your bank account and you see a pair of shoes you want. They're $180. Rested, you does the math. That's 3 weeks of coffee budget. Tired, you does something different. Research by Matthew Walker at UC Berkeley found that sleep-deprived people show 40% more activity in the brain regions linked to reward and desire, and 60% less activity in the regions linked to rational evaluation. You're not being irrational because you're weak. You're being irrational because the actual neural equipment that handles rational thinking has checked out. So here's the part that changes everything, and it connects directly back to that prefrontal cortex we started with. The reason you make worse decisions when tired is not that you lose willpower. It's that your brain physically loses the hardware to evaluate risk and simultaneously cranks up the hardware that craves reward. You're not choosing badly. Your brain is literally incapable of choosing well. But this raises another question. If your tired brain can't be trusted, how many of the big decisions in your life, the ones you made on short sleep, are actually decisions you made? Or were they made by an exhausted version of you that your rested brain would reject entirely? That one sits differently. So the answer to the hook is this. Your tired brain doesn't have access to the mental equipment that says no. It can't calculate risk because that machinery is offline, and it won't doubt itself because your reward system is running the show. You're not bad at decisions when you're tired. Your brain is temporarily incapable of good ones. But this same mechanism explains something even darker about how memory works when you're exhausted, and how easy it is for your brain to convince you something happened that didn't. That's coming soon. If this stuck with you, subscribe.